A while back I posted a video about what form cues for the handstand to prioritize in the different parts of your handstand journey. And I sectionalized the handstand into 5 different priority levels. First, just getting used to being upside down. Then learning to use your hands is priority 2. Shoulder positioning is priority level 3, which you should focus on after actually starting to learn to use your hands to balance a little bit. Then we move on to priority level 4, which is your spine and pelvic area. And then lastly, your legs, which is priority level 5. Now in this video, let's delve deeper into handstand shoulder positioning. So apart from actually learning to balance using your hands, shoulder positioning is perhaps the most important part of your handstand journey in terms of learning to do an efficient handstand and in order to control your handstand properly and to do different shapes and other handstand related skills. Now let's start with shoulder elevation, meaning pushing our shoulders up, or in the case of a handstand, pushing our shoulders down into the ground. And firstly, when doing this, you can imagine pushing your head away from the floor as much as possible. So why is this important? There are, in my opinion, especially 2 reasons why this is important for handstands. One is that when you are elevating your shoulders, it's easier to flex them properly, meaning it's easier to get your arms in line with your upper body. The perhaps even more important reason, which is applicable even if you aren't flexible enough to flex your shoulders properly, is that by elevating, you transfer more of the weight onto your muscles as opposed to resting on your joints. So this is important both for injury prevention reasons as well as control, because when we use our muscles, we have much more control over our actions, rather than if we were resting on our joints, we would be much more unstable. As with all form cues, this is best introduced against a wall by pushing your head as far away from the floor as possible. Then you can go down, again, push up, and do this to gain control and strength in this position. Once your handstand is good enough and you have enough control, you can transfer this over to a freestanding handstand, pushing your head as far away from the floor as possible. You can even try and do this for repetitions up and down in order to gain more control, awareness, and strength. Now let's talk about the big bad wolf, the shoulder flexion. Shoulder flexion meaning getting your shoulders in line with your upper body. And this is often what I would like to refer to as the bottleneck of handstanding. Because if you can't do this, then any other form cues starting from shoulders up to your feet is more or less useless. I mean, whatever you do with your spine and your hips, it won't be applicable because the rest of your body is not in line. Let's consider the hip and spine form cues. You should have a neutral spine and a posteriorly tilted pelvis, meaning your spine should be more or less straight and your pelvic should not be pointed this way but tucked in this way. If we have a handstand that is not flexed in our shoulders due to mobility reasons, and we try to do this, we end up in a very planche-like position. And this is super heavy. So if we can't flex our shoulders, then we need to bend our spine and we need to anteriorly tilt our pelvic. So, and the difficult part here is that developing this mobility in your shoulders is going to take a long time. And obsessing over your banana shape is useless if you don't have the mobility. You just need to work on your mobility on the side, and then you can just spend the time getting super awesome at handstand balancing in a banana shape. That being said though, you should focus on this, and your aim should be to have flexed shoulders in your handstand. I just don't want you to obsess about it for the wrong reasons. So practice your shoulder mobility on the side while you're training your handstands. And my favorite drill for practicing shoulder mobility is if you are able to do a wall-assisted handstand, like this. Move away from the floor a little bit, push your hips down and your chest out. Look in the floor because this is what we do in a handstand, so it's more relevant this way. And now push your hips down, push your chest out. And this will develop both shoulder mobility and flexibility as well as thoracic spine mobility. So you basically kill two birds in one stone, which I always like to do. In addition to this, you will also develop strength because you're basically having your whole body weight on top of your shoulders, which is what you have in a handstand. And a lot of people use passive stretches to increase their flexibility and range of motion in their shoulders, but then they fail to do a handstand with flexed shoulders because they don't have any strength in this position. So training your flexibility in a loaded way like this ensures that you also get the strength you need. So we have shoulder elevation, shoulder flexion, and the last thing is internal rotation. And this might be the most difficult to comprehend of all of these shoulder form cues, and it's also a rather advanced one and not really a very necessary one. But if you want to get a super efficient handstand in terms of the corrections you do to balance, then I think it's a good idea to consider practicing internal rotation. I recently made a video about how to balance the handstand and how you can do handstand corrections, and I go into detail in this video about how internal rotation can make your balancing more efficient. But in short, internal rotation means pointing your elbow pits towards each other, like this, in a handstand. As you do this together with shoulder elevation, if you fall backwards, down like this, you can make a correction without falling forwards in your shoulder. Because normally we would need to correct a little bit like this, because we want to transfer our weight from our palms to our hand heels. And to do this, we either need to fall forwards in our shoulders, or we can try to lift our fingers and go back to an external rotation in order to transfer the weight. And this is much more efficient. So if I fall slightly backwards, I make a correction by doing this. Now, internal rotation will also help you sort of lock out the elevated position in a handstand. At least that's sort of how it feels like. And when you're starting to move towards one-arm handstanding, internal rotation is crucial because we need to use our elbows to balance in this direction. We don't just need to balance forwards and backwards, but sideways. And we want to prevent using our legs for this. And then we need to use our elbows a little bit. In order for this to work, our elbow needs to point inwards. Internal rotation of the shoulders will also help us sort of lock out the shoulder positioning and tighten our upper back muscles in order to have a very tight shoulder positioning, because optimally we really do not want to change our shoulder position much when we're balancing. This will in turn help you get a very efficient handstand that you can hold for a long time without getting tired. Like with all form cues, we start by practicing them against the wall. So we basically do elevation and then inwards rotation, making our elbows point towards each other. And then we can try and do it for repetitions, twist them out and back. And we can get a feel for balancing in this position and how it makes it any different. We can practice these corrections using our shoulder rotation and see sort of how our bodies or how our handstand reacts to it. And then when we're ready, we can try experiment with it in a freestanding handstand and just get a feel for how our balance and body is affected by this. So that was short about shoulder positioning for handstands. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out the how not to fall backwards video, where I go further into the balancing aspect of internal rotation. You can check it out here or in the description. And you can check out some of my other tutorials in this playlist right here. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.